Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 5 player game, Stonespine Architects, designed by Georgi Auden and published by Thunderworks Games, who helped sponsor this video. As a miniature architect in the Queen's employ, you've been tasked with building a dungeon worthy of challenging the most ambitious heroes. And the one amongst you who can prove yourself most capable will earn the title of Master Architect. So grab your blueprints and tools, join me at the table, and let's learn how to play. To set up, put this tracking board in the center of the play area. The side for solo play has this single icon in the corner, so flip the board over if you have 2 to 5 players. In this video, we'll assume that we have 3. Each player now collects 2 dungeon frames, a set of double-sided player reference cards, and the tracking markers and doorway pieces in their chosen color. Assemble the frame like this, and then collect one of each player's markers. Mix and randomly place one from left to right onto the empty spaces of this priority display found on the tracking board. Then, using this table found in the rulebook, which is also here on your player reference, set each player's other marker onto the indicated spaces of this gold track based on each player's position on the priority track. Blue, which is in the first position, starts on 0, while green and yellow both start on 1, stacked in any order. The cards with this back are the goals, which you'll shuffle, dealing 1 face up onto the space here, returning the rest back to the box. The cards with this back are the challenges, which you'll shuffle, dealing a number of them face up based on this table in the rulebook and also found here on your player aid. So in our 3-player game, we would deal 4 of these cards face up, and the rest we leave in a face down deck nearby. Also nearby, create a supply of these market tokens, ensuring they're face down, mixed thoroughly, and sorted by shape. Here I'm using the game's included tray to organize them. Next, find the deck of market cards which have this back. Shuffle these, and using this chart found in the rulebook and here on your player reference, deal a number of them face up based on your player count. So 2 in this case, since we have 3 players. The rest of the deck you'll keep face down nearby. Now draw and place face up market tokens from the supply that match each of the shapes found on each of the market cards so that it looks something like this when you're done. The cards with this back are the blueprints. Shuffle and deal 1 to each player, which they'll set face up in front of themselves. Once each player has been given one, the rest you'll return to the box. Your blueprint will be made up of 4 columns of squares, which match the 4 sections of your dungeon frame. And one of these columns will have a doorway icon above it. You'll now place one of your doorway markers into that position on your dungeon frame. Your other doorway you'll use later. Finally, shuffle the chamber cards which have this back into a face-down deck and deal each player 5 cards from it. You can always look at your own chamber cards, but keep them a secret from the other players. And that's the setup. In Stonespine Architects, you and the other players will be constructing dungeons filled with traps, monsters, and treasure, all in an effort to score points in a variety of ways that we'll learn about as we go. Have the most points by the end of the game, and you'll win. At the beginning, your dungeon is empty, but by the end, it will look something like this, containing exactly 16 chamber cards arranged in a 4x4 grid with an entrance and an exit, and several tokens placed throughout. Before we get into the main rules, I'd like to provide you with a tour of some key dungeon features. Your dungeon will be made up of several chamber cards. These always show a picture of the chamber in this area, and below that you'll find its name and a gold value. Each chamber will come from one of 2 possible types. Caves, like this one, will show this symbol in the corner and have a brown shade to its chamber artwork. And the other type is stone, like this one, which shows this symbol and has a bluish-gray art style. Chambers will have doors within their artwork, which look like this, as well as paths that connect the doors, or in some cases, like we see here, paths that just come to a dead end. Finally, each chamber has between 0 to 4 elements printed on it. Elements can be different traps, like we see here, or you may also find a variety of monsters, like these chambers show. You can also find treasure chests scattered around, and finally, what are known as reputation stars, which can be either positive values in gold or negative values in gray. Your player reference cards will show you what each symbol in the game represents, so if you need a reminder, just refer here when playing. For now, though, the important thing I want you to remember is that each chamber will have between 0 to 4 printed elements. For example, this one here has 2, and this one has 3. Either way, those elements will always be found in some combination of these 4 positions within the chamber. We'll see why all of this is important soon enough, but for now, the tour is over. Stonespine Architects is played over a series of 4 rounds known as years. And each year is divided into 3 phases, starting with the construction phase. Here, each player privately examines their hand of chamber cards and picks one they wish to add to their dungeon, placing it face down in front of themselves. Once everyone has chosen a card, players will reveal them simultaneously, placing their chosen chamber into their dungeon. During a year, or round as it's also known, all chamber cards you place must go into a single row. The top row, right below the dungeon frame in the first year. But each one can be placed in any open position there. For example, I could place this one I revealed right here. We'll learn why you might want to put chambers in certain locations a little later. Just know, once placed, a chamber can't be moved. So, during the construction phase, each player picks a card to reveal and place in their dungeon. However, in a 2-player game, and only in a 2-player game, each person picks 2 cards from their hand. One that they'll reveal and add to their dungeon, and the other that they'll add to a shared discard pile by the draw deck. No matter the player count, after adding a chamber to their dungeon, each person passes the remaining cards in their hand to the next player in clockwise order, so that everyone receives a new hand of cards. Now here again, there is an extra step in just a 2-player game. After passing, both players each draw a new single card from the deck to add to their hand. Either way, after cards have been passed, players again repeat the steps of this phase, picking and placing a card face down, and then when everyone's ready, revealing and adding them to their dungeon. And don't forget, in a 2-player game, you'd be picking 2 cards, one to add to your dungeon and one to discard. Either way, then players pass their hands to the next player in clockwise order. You'll gain some new cards, and again, you'll pick another one to put into your dungeon, pass, pick another one to put into your dungeon, until you've placed 4 rooms in your dungeon, leaving you with 1 card left over, which everyone will then discard. So this means during the construction phase, you'll be filling your current row with 4 cards. You'll remember that these will show doors and paths, and I'll point out paths are considered connected if adjacent cards have doors printed on their shared sides. For example, this path is connected through these doors here, and these as well. And it's okay that this is a cave chamber and this is a stone chamber. These are still considered connected. Also, this piece is considered a door, so this path with a door here connects to this entrance. Just be aware, you don't have to connect your paths. For example, this door here leads to a wall, so it's basically a dead end, and that's allowed. This door leads off the edge of your dungeon going nowhere, and that's okay too. You'll often want to create connected paths, but why that's important will be easier to understand once we've learned later a little more about how dungeons are scored. That said, after everyone has completed the row for the current year and discarded the remaining card, we move to the improvement phase of the round, which is divided into 2 steps, starting with counting gold. Here, every player totals the gold values shown on the bottom of their current row of chamber cards. So 1 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2, which is 8. You then add to this 1 gold for each of these treasure chests found anywhere within your dungeon. So I would gain 2 more gold for a total of 10. However, if it was the improvement step of the second round, our dungeon might look like this. And I'll point out, when placing chambers in each new year, you fill in the next row of your dungeon. So the second row in the second round, the third row in the third round, and so on. And you'll notice cards in future rows are placed so they cover the gold symbol of the previous row's chambers, like I've done here. So if I was adding up my gold in the second round, I would total all of these values and add 1 for every chest in my dungeon, not just the current row. So this time I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 more chests of gold to add to my total. And with that understood, let's go back to the first round where I had calculated my total gold value as 10. Whatever your total, advance your marker here on the gold track that number of spaces. I had a total of 10, so my marker advances to here, and we'll say the others advanced to here and here. To end this step, move each player's priority marker to the space directly below that track without changing the order. With the gold counted, the next step of the phase is to visit the market. Here, turns are taken by the player who has the most gold. In this case, it's me as the blue player, and I have 2 options. I can either buy tokens or pass. To buy tokens, I examine the cards here that make up the market. Each card is divided into 2 sections, and you pick any one section showing a gold cost value you can afford. Let's say I picked this one with a cost of 5. I then spend that 5 gold by reducing my gold marker by that amount. I then collect the tokens from that section and must immediately place them in my dungeon. No matter what round or year you're currently in, tokens can go into any chamber of your dungeon, divided as you like. For example, if this was the second round, I could combine or divide these tokens among any of the 8 chambers I'd currently have. Either way, these tokens represent elements. As we mentioned earlier, chambers will have 0 to 4 elements already printed on them, representing treasures, traps, monsters, and reputation stars. These tokens allow you to add even more elements to these chambers, but keep in mind, a chamber can have at most 4 elements. So by adding this one here, no more tokens can be placed in this room as it's already full. And you can never place an element so it covers another one. That said, you can have more than one of the same element in the same chamber. There is, however, one type of token that works differently, a secret passage token like this one. It isn't an element and doesn't take up an element space. Instead, you always place it on any edge of any chamber so it overlaps the chamber next to it if it has one. When here, the paths in these 2 chambers are now considered connected. Again, we'll see why paths are important during final scoring. But without this token, the chamber here doesn't connect to this one because they don't have doors on their adjacent sides. But with a secret passage here, their paths are now considered connected. This even works if there isn't a door on either side. With a secret passage token here, these 2 paths are now considered connected. You can also place these to connect a path to your door piece, or so that they overhang the edge of your dungeon. You can even place it so it leads into the row below your dungeon, and then in a future round when a card is placed here, these 2 chambers will be considered connected. Okay, so that's how you buy tokens. And remember, I said turns in this step are always taken by the player with the most gold. That means after a purchase is made, you check again to see who has the most gold. In this case, it's still blue, so blue goes again, meaning they'll either buy more tokens or pass. Now, if 2 players are tied for having the most gold, break the tie by checking the priority track. The tied player with their marker furthest to the left breaks the tie in their favor and takes the turn. So even in this situation, blue would still go again. Instead of buying tokens, you can pass. And you can pass even if you could buy something from the market. That said, if you can't afford anything in the market, then you must pass. When you pass, first move your gold marker to the 0 space because you don't get to keep any of your leftover gold for the next round. Then you pick any one of the revealed challenge cards by the board and set it face up beside your dungeon. This is your card, but anyone can examine it at any time, and these will come into play during final scoring, so we'll discuss them at that time. Finally, after passing, you move your priority tracker from below the board to the leftmost open space on the priority track. In this way, after everyone has passed, the order of these tokens will determine how ties are broken in the next round. So, during the visit the market step, the player with the most gold is the one who takes the next turn, meaning the same player could take more than one turn in a row as long as they continue to have the most gold. And on your turn, you either buy tokens or pass. Once all the players have passed, it's time to move to the cleanup phase of the round. First, return the market cards and tokens on them back to the box. Then replace each card removed with a new one from the deck and refill their spaces with random tokens from the supply, so it looks like this. Since each player will have claimed a challenge card from the previous phase, there'll be just one left over, which is discarded, and then you reveal a number of new ones equal to the number of players plus 1. So you deal 4 in our 3-player game. During the cleanup phase at the end of round 3, don't reveal any new challenges because players don't gain a new challenge in that following final year of the game. To finish the cleanup step, deal 5 chamber cards to each player and begin the next round, also known as beginning the next year. And you do that with the construction phase again, picking and playing cards into the next row of your dungeon. The only change is that during the construction phase, when passing cards, you change the direction as it shows here in the rulebook. During year 1 and year 3, you pass clockwise, but during year 2 and 4, you pass counterclockwise. You'll find a reminder of this and all the phases of a round right here on your player aid. During each year, you'll complete a new row of your dungeon until the end of the 4th year, where everyone will have 4 full rows in their dungeon and a collection of 3 challenge cards. That said, skip the cleanup phase of the 4th round. Instead, after the 4th round's market step, you move right to final scoring. First, examine your blueprint card and note which column your second door icon is sitting under, and then place your remaining door piece in that position. This is known as your dungeon exit. Now, using the included score pad and steps on your player aid, calculate the points everyone has earned, which we'll go through together. Points are represented by what are known as these reputation stars. Begin by checking the priority track. The player in the leftmost space now earns these 9 stars. The player in the next space over gains 6, and the player here gains 3. And in a 2-player game, no one scores these 3 points. Next, check the goal card on the board here, earning points as shown for the person in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place, based on the conditions shown here at the bottom. In this case, you check to see who has the most goblin monsters showing in their dungeon. Remember, goblins are a monster element, and you include all matching types printed anywhere in your chambers and on tokens you added. I should mention, anytime you're scoring cards and have a tie, break the tie using the priority track. So let's say that blue had the most goblins. They'd get 15 stars. If green and yellow were tied for second most, green would win the tie and get 9 stars, and yellow would get 5. Just keep in mind, if a goal is about having the most of something, then in order to qualify for any of its points, you must have at least one of that something, or you won't be able to score any points from that goal. However, if the goal is about having the fewest of something, like we see here, then having nothing still qualifies you to earn points from it. Next, each player should check the challenge cards they collected. You score points from your challenge card each time you satisfy their conditions within your dungeon. We're not going to go through every challenge card in the game, as how they work is explained on them, but let's go through a few examples together. With this one, you earn 3 reputation stars, or points, for each unique trap in your dungeon. There are 5 different traps, as you see here on your player aid, so if you manage to gain at least one of each, you could score a total of 15 points from this challenge, ignoring, of course, any duplicate traps you might have. Sometimes a challenge will refer to specific chambers in your dungeon. Here, you earn 2 reputation stars for each individual trap, no matter which type, found in the far left and far right columns of your dungeon. With this challenge, you gain 2 reputation stars for each ooze monster within any single cluster of chambers within your dungeon. So let's learn what a cluster is. Remember, chambers come in 2 types, caves and stone. A cluster is any group of chambers from the same type that are adjacent to each other on at least one full side, not including diagonally. And it doesn't matter if those chambers are connected by paths or not. You ignore the paths and only consider the chamber types. And a cluster can end up being any size, even just a single chamber. For example, here's a single chamber cluster of stone. Here we have a cluster of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 caves. Here's a cluster of 3 stone, and so on. Just note, you can't divide a larger cluster into smaller ones. So this 8 cave cluster here can't be broken into 2 clusters of 4. It's all considered connected and part of the same cluster. So for this goal, I'd pick whichever single cluster in my dungeon has the most oozes, and then I'd gain 2 reputation points for each of them. The last example we'll go over is this one. It says you gain 2 reputation stars for each slime on a single path in your dungeon. A path continues from one chamber to another if they both share sides with a door or secret passage. This here is a very short path. It comes from here, reaches a dead end on this side, and then goes through these chambers, but comes to a dead end here. This path is much longer. It branches off in multiple different directions and keeps going. When a challenge refers to a single path, like we see here, it means a path that you follow, ignoring any of the branching off paths. Instead, you'll just follow one single path throughout your journey. For example, if I'm checking for the most slimes along this path, I would follow it like this, but when I get to the split here, I pick one of the directions and keep going, not including slimes along this branching path. Or instead, I could have gone in this direction and ignored this branch. After scoring all your challenge cards, it's time to check your chamber reputation. Here you add together all the gold reputation stars in your dungeon and subtract the values in all of the gray stars, which could leave you with a negative total. Moving on, each player now checks the blueprint card they were dealt during the setup. This shows the 16-chamber grid of your dungeon with what are known as demand icons on 8 of them. To meet a demand, at least one of the element or indicated chamber type must be located in the matching position of your dungeon. For example, this says the top left chamber must contain a treasure chest. Mine does, so I've met that demand. As we see here, the chamber below this one should be a cave, but mine is stone, so I don't meet that requirement. And just so it's clear, this symbol here means having at least 1 reputation star of either type, gold or gray, within that chamber. Check how many requirements you satisfy and find that value in the small circle at the bottom, earning the reputation stars shown below it. If you met only 3 or fewer of the demands, you'll score nothing from your blueprint. The final step of scoring is to calculate the reputation points you've earned from your dungeon paths. One by one, check each chamber of your dungeon. If you can trace a connected path from it all the way back to your entrance, it scores you 1 point. If you can trace a path from it all the way to your exit, it also scores you 1 point. In this way, each chamber can score you up to 2 points if it connects to both your entrance and exit. If it only connects to one of them, it will score you a single point. And chambers that can't connect to either your entrance or exit score you no points. When tracing a path from a chamber to either your entrance or exit, it doesn't matter how many turns, twists, and branching paths you have to follow, as long as it ultimately leads you to the door piece you're checking for. With that in mind, you'll want to be careful not to put a chamber next to one of your door pieces that has no path and door connecting to it. For example, this door is connected to the path here. But if this chamber was in this position instead, then none of the chambers in your dungeon could score a point for connecting to your exit because your exit isn't connected to any path in the first place. That said, if a secret passage was here, now this door is considered connected to this chamber. Okay, with that we've covered all the ways to score reputation stars, and once you've calculated all the points gained by each dungeon, the player with the most points wins. In the case of a tie, as usual, break the tie by checking the priority order. The game also comes with rules and components for solo play, but those I'll leave for you to discover on your own. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Stonespine Architects. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, Thanks for watching.